Hey guys, it's BearInABackpack, and today I'm reviewing a real-time strategy by Zillion Whales called Mushroom Wars 2. Mushroom Wars 2 is the sequel to the relatively popular Mushroom Wars, as you might have guessed. That was a popular PlayStation game. Essentially what it is it's a tug-of-war numbers game. Now, the real-time strategy comes in is that you're trying to direct your hordes of mushroom people to attack the other hordes of mushroom people in a battle for supremacy of the battlefield. So you're trying to take over all the little huts and villages quicker than your opponent and wipe them from the map, at least in the basic gameplay, which is kind of like a domination style thing. The game's pretty easy to pick up. It really only has a few basic controls. You're using Q, W, E, and R to use your hero abilities, which we'll talk a little bit about later, and then you just use the mouse to send units across the map from place to place. Depending on the level you play, each level has its own theme to it, some objective you have to do to be able to win. So sometimes you start outnumbered, sometimes the enemy gets access to upgrades right away, sometimes you have the upgrades but the enemy has more numbers. There's things like this that alter the way you have to play the game in order to win. So for those of you who have played Galcon, it's very, very similar to that, almost exactly like that, and I would say it's pretty heavily inspired by games like that. So if you've ever played any of those kind of swarm type games with like iOS or Android, it's very, very similar to that. It's just on PC. So as you go along playing through the game, you are able to unlock heroes that each have their own special abilities that can quickly turn the tide of battle. So depending on the hero you use, for instance, one of them has the ability to just send down like a comet from the sky and just wipe out a huge chunk of units, which if you're being attacked by like a huge swarm of enemies and you're worried about taking, a pretty heavy loss to one of your bases, you can just throw that thing down and kill basically all of them. And because it takes a little while to recoup losses like that, it can swing the battle in your favor pretty quickly. Now, some heroes are more useful than others. There are some heroes that just really don't do all that much. I mean, they have nice powers, but they're just not as useful as others. So that's something to be aware of when you're playing this, and I've heard that this can be especially damaging in multiplayer, where there's a bunch of different heroes you can use, but there's really only a couple that are really worth it. In addition to the unit-making buildings, there's also towers that can be used to defend an area, as well as forges that give your units an extra boost. So normally, when I say it's a numbers game, you basically have to just straight up have more units than the enemy has occupying a building in order to take it. But if you have a forge, it increases the power of the unit, meaning you need less people to actually capture something. So sometimes, well, most times, you end up basically just fighting over the forge, and whoever has that is probably going to win because they're going to have much stronger units, and they're going to do a lot more damage when they do send them. In general, it feels pretty heavily like a mobile port, especially including like the menu layout and just the relative flow of the game. I mean, from looks and functionality alone, it feels just like an Android game, which, hey, if that's your thing, cool. You definitely feel the repetition of the game, and that comes up really quickly. So there's, I think, if I remember correctly, 100 plus levels in the game, but by about level 15, you're already kind of going like, all right, I get it. I want to have more units than the enemy, get the forge first, wipe them off the map. The level design does kind of keep it fresh every once in a while. It does add some new themes, some new challenges that you have to overcome, but in general, it's kind of the same thing over and over and over again. In addition to that, the music is also quite repetitive. You're going to get the same, minute-and-a-half loop of music for the whole time you're playing, and it doesn't really change from level to level. It's pretty much the same thing. I think it took till level 20 or so for the next, track to show up. And really, the worst thing was that there were occasional game-breaking bugs. No, it literally crashed and lost my save. So, yeah. And not once, 3 separate times. It broke 3 separate times. So, hopefully they're getting to fixing that. At the time I'm writing this, not so much. Happened again. It's a bit buggy. And for a $15 game, that's essentially a mobile port with bugs that's super repetitive with not that much going for it. It's a little steep to pay for something like that. So overall, I'd say if you're a fan of the Galcon type, real-time strategy where you're just sending hundreds of units to try and take over enemy bases, like that style of gameplay, the very mobile game feel of game, then yeah, it might be right up your alley. Again, it is $15, so it's a little steep for that type of game, but if that's your kind of thing, hey. So, this has been my review for Mushroom Wars 2. If you like the review, go ahead and like it down below. If you really like it, hey, I do these every once in a while, so go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And if you didn't like it, well, I suppose there's also a thumbs down button, but don't be that guy. See you guys next time.
you.